For the longest of times, whenever I hear someone say you have to be realistic with your goals, I always kind of took it a little bit personally. To me, it felt like you were saying I mustn't strive for excellence. Like I mustn't strive to, go after the things that I truly want in life. You know, like whenever someone will say, yeah, it's all well and good to focus on your passions or go after your passions, but you must also be realistic. We live in the real world, and I never liked those words, and especially when I was younger. Today I kind of understand. I understand those words really well, actually, because of the experiences that I've had over the years. When someone says, "Hey, you have to be realistic," you need to put food on the table. You need to get a job. You cannot just be, going after these dreams of yours. How in the heck are you going to feed yourself with those dreams? There's no money, the things that you're trying to pursue. I absolutely understand it, because you do need to, because the older you get, the more responsibilities you have, and you need to take care of your responsibilities. And sometimes your goals that are your dreams, your passions, it's very often that they're not very compatible with, or rather they don't really have a lot of potential to help you with your finances. Like I had a dream of being of making graphic novels a while back, and I actually pursued that dream pretty hard. I started making comics, but I wasn't very focused because I kept moving. I kept changing I kept changing the things that I wanted to do. It started with a graphic novel, and then, okay, maybe it should be a web comic. And then I gravitated to that. I was like, okay, I started making a bunch of web comics, a couple of pages a week for a while. And then, so let's say, okay, actually, even with web comics, I went in so hard that I felt like, oh man, I wonder if this can make me money and I can just live off of this, something like that. Like thinking about a goal, thinking of taking web comics and making it as your source of income. I think it's fair to say that is not a very realistic goal. I mean, there are people who are making bank with web comics, but it's very hard. It's very hard to do that, because web comics, the web comic world is extremely saturated and it doesn't really pay much, So if you have a love for web comics, that's your passion, it could be fair for someone to come to you and say, hey, it's nice that you have this passion of yours, pursue it by all means, but you need a job. You need a job. And like I said, for the longest of time, I never wanted to hear that. But I think it's a fair thing to say, hey, listen, I have this passion for me, which is drawing, and getting a job, having a day job is actually part of it, because the day job helps me financially to be able to continue to do this thing that I love, which is drawing. The money that I make from my day job, I can buy art supplies, purchase a Eclipse Studio license, it helps. So that's one way to look at it. This idea of thinking realistically. Now, having said all of that, I still have this. I still gravitate more to this idea of being a bit unrealistic, like just going for having lofty dreams and going after them, and just going after them, even though they might not sound realistic. I think you can strike a balance between the two, where you're like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm taking care of my responsibilities, but also at the same time, I want to strive for big goals. So I think you can set up your system in such a way that these two are not clashing with each other. Like your realistic ambitions, or rather your unrealistic, your quote unquote unrealistic ambitions, don't consume your entire, your entire life. They don't take time from your day job. They don't take time from your relationships, because I have actually done that in the past, where I just went so hard to the point where I quit my job. I quit my job so that I can pursue making art a full time. And I did that for 2 years, actually. I left my job and then I started making, during that period, I made a comic book that I published on Amazon, which was terrible. And I also made a novel. And I did a bunch of other things as well during that period. But I don't want to get into that in this video. I'll have to set that up for another video. But the point I'm trying to make is, with that experience, I learned quite a bit. And what I learned was, me personally, I would love to not have a job and just draw all day. That will be the dream for me personally. If I can just get to a point where I'm just drawing and making enough income where I don't have to go to work, that will bring me so much joy. But also at the same time, I don't really hate my current life. I draw maybe like an hour or two a day, and then during the week, I'm talking about during the weekdays, and then I go to work. I don't hate my job either. I like the fact that I go to work and then I'm surrounded by a community of people. I'm interacting with people. I'm working with people. I like working in a team. It helps me grow as a person, and human interaction is very important as well. And I just come home, and then maybe if I have time, I will squeeze in an hour. So what I do is I draw, I take an hour in the morning to draw, and then I draw also in the evening another hour. So 2 hours a day at most. So yeah, that is basically, I have an hour, 30 minutes minimum that I draw every weekday. And I'm happy with that. Now, would I like to have more time to draw? Absolutely. But realistically speaking, this is all I can do. And that's okay. That's okay. I remember asking myself a question this one time, because, like I said, I always wanted to have drawing be the main thing that I do, and have it feed me, have it put enough money in my bank account where I can just focus on it full time. But for a long time, that was never happening. And I got to a point where I had to ask myself this question. Hey, listen, let's say that never happens. Let's say your dreams never come true. Let's say you're never going to get to a point where drawing is going to be a source of income for you. You're never going to make any money drawing, ever. Let's say you know this for a fact. For the rest of your life, that will never happen. Would you still draw? And I didn't even have to think about it. The answer was yes. Absolutely, I would draw. And that's kind of how I approach my art these days. It's like I'm treating it as, I'm never going to make money with this ever. But I'm going to do it anyway because I love it. So it kind of takes away that frustration that I used to have for so long. Like, oh man, I'm not getting attention online. I need to turn this into a, I need to monetize my art in some way. And now let me be clear. I haven't abandoned that goal of monetizing my art. That is still something that I'm striving to do, but I'm approaching it from a lens of maybe that will never happen, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So it's like I accept my situation and I look for things to be grateful for in my current life. Like I have a job and I can still draw. I mean, that is awesome. I still draw. And I have a job that gives me money so I can feed myself, take care of myself, take care of my loved ones, and that is awesome. That is awesome. So I'm saying that being realistic is a fair approach to take with your art. Be realistic in the sense of don't quit your job and just burn everything down and say you're going full head first in, unless if you have like a solid plan, or you have enough money in your bank account where you can survive, or you don't have to worry about money at all, then absolutely do that. But if you know that you have obligations, I think it's important to take care of your obligations while you strive for this goal that you have. And if you never reach that goal, and I know it's not a nice thing to hear, and like I said before, I never wanted to hear this. Whenever someone says, hey, you must bear in mind that this might not work out and you must have a plan B. I hated that. I hated the concept of a plan B. No, I don't want a plan B. I don't want something to fall back on. I want to go full on, eggs in one basket, burn the boats. And that was my mentality for a very, very long time. I don't really have that mentality anymore. And I'm not bashing anyone who has that mentality. I totally understand it, where you have this belief, and it's admirable, to have this belief in yourself, to say, you know what, I can do this. Come dark or blue, I'm doing this. And I still have a bit of that in me, but these days I'm just taking a different approach. One might say a safer approach, which, I can understand anyone who's listening to this and not liking the things that I'm saying. I get it. I absolutely get it. But if you feel confident in burning your boats, going full on, I think, like for me, someone in my situation, I'm not married, I don't have kids, but I do have family members. I have siblings, I have my mom, I have, people that I want to help out financially. So I have to think about that stuff. So if, for example, you are married, you have children, then you definitely have things to consider before you make such a drastic decision. So this idea of being realistic with your art goals, I agree with it. Today I absolutely agree with it that yes, strive for excellence, strive for your goals, reach for the stars, absolutely do that. But do it, for me, I would say do it in such a way that it doesn't compromise all your other obligations, all your other things that contribute to your life, So that is my approach. I try not to be reckless. Just go one step at a time instead of making these giant leaps. I've made these leaps before in the past, and I actually don't regret the leaps that I've made, because they kind of, even though things didn't work out, they kind of led me to a very good place in my life. a very, very good place in my life. I learned a lot, and I ended up like nothing terrible happened, you know. So I'm not sitting here telling people not to make these giant leaps. Sometimes you just get to that point in your life where you're like, I have to. Like for me, something was just calling inside of me saying, you have to do this. And like I said, even though things didn't work out, I'm happy that I did. And I'll talk more about this in another video. Today, I just want to talk about this idea of should you be realistic with your goals, or just go head first, forget everything else. And I would say take it a step at a time. No need for giant leaps unless you feel you have to, And if you feel you have to, I'm not going to stop you. I'm going to wish you all the best. I'm going to wish that you succeed. And I know that if you are at this point in your life where you're about to take this leap, what I can say to you is, I'm not going to talk you out of it. What I will tell you is because I know there's definitely that fear of what if things go wrong. And I can confidently tell you that if things do go wrong, it's not going to be as bad as you think. So yeah, I'm not really giving a definite answer to this question of should you take a leap of faith and just dive head first, or should you be more strategic, take the safer route? I'm just saying the safer route is something that I would take at this point in my life. And for you, you know your situation, you know where you're at in your life, and I would say just believe in yourself and just make the decisions that feels right to you. And I will catch you in the next video. Cheers.